February 18, 2021 at 6:40 p.m. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion by Trustee Elliott.
Second by,
Marissa Mack.
thank you, Marissa. I'm gonna just vote that by acclamation if I can. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'm gonna pass it to, I think I got a little ahead of myself, to Angel Muscane, so he can do the opening remarks. Sorry, Angel.
No problem. You would think the executive committee wouldn't need to hear this, just to be consistent.
Okay.
So meetings of the community board are being conducted by video conference. Links to register to attend our meetings are published on the calendar on our website, CB11M.org. To avoid crosstalk and help the meeting run effectively, panelists and attendees are asked to keep their microphones on mute when they are not speaking. It is also helpful to utilize headphones. Those participating by phone can dial *6 to unmute. If you wish to share a question or comment, you may do so by utilizing the raise hands function. Those participating by phone can dial *9 to raise their hand. I'll monitor those requests to ensure that hands are recognized in turn. Questions left in the chat will not be recognized. Board members will be called on first, and then attendees, please keep your questions or comments brief and on topic.
Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to move to number 2 on the agenda, announcements.
I can read these, just the last minute reminder. The Borough President's Office has really been asking us to do these. So applications for community board membership and for reappointment are due by 5 o'clock on February the 22nd. We started uploading recordings of our board meetings to our YouTube page. So those of you that are interested, we're up there through as of December and forward. They should all be up or soon be up.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Angel. Is there anyone who would like to make any announcements other than what Angel said? If not, I'm going to move to the informational updates. All right. I don't see any raised hands, so I'm just going to say that next week I'll get more information. There will be another forum done by another community board, and we will send that to everyone else. In terms of the community, and a lot of the stakeholders are looking at the fact that we are behind in vaccination in a lot of our communities. And so they're going to be putting together a push to find out how we can get more vaccinations and opening more sites. As soon as I get more information on that, I will let you know. And today there was an informational meeting at the 125th Street Working Group. And so the different city agencies informed Diana Ayala and those who attended as to their efforts to help with the various issues on 125th Street. And so all in all, it seemed that that meeting was a bit more positive, as well as the borough board meeting today, where we discussed various issues. So with that, if anybody else has any informational updates, please raise your hand now. And if there are none, then we will move to the discussions and presentations. Okay, I see no raised hands. So with that, we're at number 4 at the agenda. We have a presentation by Ryan Dubois, Commission on Human Rights. And so he's going to do an informational presentation regarding the New York City human rights law. Mr. Dubois, take it again. Am I saying your name correctly?
You are, thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, my pleasure. Yeah, so thank you everybody. Thank you to the committee for having me here. It's definitely a pleasure to be able to present to you and speak with you this evening. So as was stated, my name is Ryan Dubois. I'm an associate human rights specialist with the Community Relations Bureau of the Commission on Human Rights. So essentially in tonight's presentation, I'm just going to give you an introduction to my agency, what we do, the resources that we provide, how community members can access our resources. Unfortunately, many people in the community have not even heard of our agency, let alone, the resources that we provide, which are all completely free. And so, the function of what we do is to make sure that we serve as a link between the resources that we offer and the people in the community who really need those resources the most, educate them and make sure they can access those resources. So with that said, just checking in with you, my understanding is that I have like about 10 to 15 minutes to do the presentation. So my plan was to just speak for about 10 minutes and then leave the floor open, for questions and answers and discussion. So that's the plan, unless, the committee, wants to give any further different guidance. And I'm also gonna be, yeah,
Ryan, we've moved a little ahead so that if you need more than 15 minutes and would like to expand it by 5 more minutes, that's perfectly fine. If you need a total of 20 minutes, that's okay.
Okay, great, thank you. And it's okay if I share a PowerPoint?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna go ahead and share a PowerPoint. This presentation can be very lengthy. It can sometimes be up to like a 2-hour presentation. So I'm going to give a very condensed version. So I'm definitely not going to go through the full PowerPoint. I'm just going to go through kind of the first section, give an overview, and then, like I said, we'll open it up for discussion. So allow me to share my screen. Okay, well, let's take it from the beginning. Okay, so Commission on Human Rights. So the Commission on Human Rights is a law enforcement agency. The legal code that we enforce is the human rights law. The human rights law is the city's civil rights code or anti-discrimination law. And so, we'll be getting into exactly, what that looks like, what the details of that law are, and how we go about that enforcement. Let's go through that. So this is something that I like to start with, just to kind of speak a little bit thematically about the commission. So like I said, we are a law enforcement agency, but our mission, of course, goes beyond simply providing legal resources to individuals and really to uphold the values of our city as a pluralistic democracy. So I like to start with this quote here. So the commission was actually initially created as the Committee on Unity in 1944. And the story is really particularly relevant here because it really speaks to some of the issues that unfortunately we are still dealing with today in the city. Essentially, this Committee on Unity was created in reaction to riots that erupted in Harlem, which were instigated by a law enforcement officer shooting an unarmed Black man who was actually also a returned veteran. And so the Committee on Unity was really created to address that, and that's why I really start by saying that the core issues that were at the heart of the creation of the commission are still unfortunately relevant today. But the quote here that I like to start with is that the purpose of the committee was to make New York City a place where people of all races and religions may work and live side by side in harmony and have mutual respect for each other, and where democracy is a living reality. So, of course, as a law enforcement agency, like I said, we do represent the rights of particular individuals who have experienced discrimination. But, these concepts here are really on a larger macro scale, what the agency is about and what we're working towards. So in 1955, Mayor Wagner, under Mayor Wagner, the committee became a full city agency and adopted the name Commission on Intergroup Relations. And in 1962 was renamed the Commission on Human Rights. So as a breakdown of exactly how our commission operates, so we essentially break down into 4 different departments. So number 1, as I mentioned, the Community Relations Bureau, so that's who I'm with. Essentially, the legal resources that we provide are not worth much if people in the community are not accessing them. So the Community Relations Bureau, our job is to essentially be the link between the agency and the community to make sure that people are aware of our agency, the fact that we exist, the fact that these resources are available, the fact that these resources are completely free, the fact that, we do not ever, charge a fee or anything like that associated with settlements, and that people can really get concrete, tangible benefits out of accessing these services. And in addition to that, we also do additional work in the community. We work with youth groups, we work with community groups, we work with faith communities. We, as I mentioned, promoting the values of equality, understanding, mutual respect. We have a lot of different community programs oriented towards that. We do cultural celebrations, we host panel discussions. We also do what we call, intergroup relations. If we know that there are tensions between particular communities that we want to bring together in dialogue, or, highlight the struggles or the achievements of historically marginalized groups. These are all things that Community Relations Bureau will focus on. But in particular, one of our bedrock activities that we do is trainings just like these. So interacting with community groups, delivering this information, ensuring that advocates who are, working with the community, maybe have been in the community for decades or generations, that they have the information that they can disseminate, and also that we're getting in front of the community members who really need the information and the resources the most. Law Enforcement Bureau, of course, as the name indicates, this is where our attorneys operate. In normal circumstances, the office would be located in Lower Manhattan. Well, the office is located in Lower Manhattan, but of course it's vacated at the moment. So our attorneys continue to represent clients working remotely. And as I mentioned, all of our legal representation is completely free. Office of Mediation. Oh, before I move on, one more thing I want to say about the Law Enforcement Bureau as well. So when it comes to our settlements, people often ask, what do our settlements look like? Of course, first and foremost, we are looking to get justice for the individual. So if the individual was fired from a job, we want them to get that job back. If they're not comfortable, taking that job back, we want them to have adequate financial compensation for the money that they lost. And in addition, whatever would look like, a fair and just settlement, taking into consideration, emotional stress and emotional damages, all these types of things. If a person lost housing, we want them to get their housing back, or similar comparable housing, or if they were denied housing, we want them to get access to housing. So we're always looking for, our settlements are oriented primarily for justice for the individual. However, in addition, we also have a restorative justice framework. So in addition to justice for the individual, we also want to come up with creative ways to assess how can we institute mechanisms that will prevent this type of discrimination from occurring in the future. Sometimes that's weighing heavy penalties against the entity that discriminated. Sometimes that's also working with that entity to shift their organizational culture. As I said, in order to make sure that there are instituted mechanisms, which we also will be monitoring over time, that are being instituted to shift the culture and the practices of institutions in New York City. So moving on to Office of Mediation and Conflict Resolution. So in the instance that we have a case and there's potential to reach a settlement through negotiation without actually having to go through litigation, then that would be the job of the Office of Mediation and Conflict Resolution to, bring both parties together and try to negotiate a resolution that is fair and just for the, party that was the victim of discrimination. And then we have the Office of the Chair. Our policy department resides here, as well as the commissioner herself, our Commissioner Malalis, which actually has the authority to issue a final decision and order. So our attorneys operate in the oath courts, the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, but the commissioner actually has the authority to essentially disagree with the judge's recommendation and issue a final ruling. And that also includes, increasing or decreasing the nature of penalties. In addition to that, we can issue legal orders, legal guidance, additional rules and regulations with regard to the human rights law, drafting policy and legislation, and also communicating with community stakeholders to make sure that, as a government agency, we are in touch with the community and maintaining the pulse of the community. Let's just skip that for now. So this is one of the most important parts of the presentation. And actually, this is probably the last slide that I'll go on, just because this is a really dense, part of the presentation. So looking at, we enforce the anti-discrimination law. What does that look like? Where do we have protections? So these are the 5 primary areas where we enforce the anti-discrimination law: employment, public accommodations, housing, discriminatory harassment, and bias-based profiling by law enforcement. Each of these could be a full presentation in and of itself. So I'm just gonna try to give, an abbreviated version of what the protections in each look like. So employment, we focus primarily on hiring, firing, and unequal conditions in the workplace. Hiring, of course, if somebody is being unwrongfully denied a job on a discriminatory basis, technical term that we use is a protected class. So protected class, you would think, you know, the typical things that people might think of off the top of their head with regard to discrimination. Race, color, religion, sexual orientation, disability, national origin, language. But there's actually 27 total protected classes. And it's also important to note that some of those protected classes apply to certain areas of the law and not others. So one example in the area of employment is marijuana testing. So it's illegal for an employer, as of recently actually, it's illegal for an employer to do a marijuana test or a test for related chemicals in the job application process. Now, that's of course an employment specific protection. So that protected class is not going to appear in the other areas of the law. And there's quite a few that apply in different areas. But so in any event, talking about employment, one of the most important things that I like to mention as well, because this is something that unfortunately we know is a very common form of discrimination, and people are unfortunately still a little bit undereducated about their rights in this area, is with regard to inquiries about criminal record and arrest history. So it is illegal in the vast majority of cases for jobs on the market for employers to inquire at all under any circumstances in the job application process about criminal record, arrest record, or any related history of interaction with law enforcement, with the exception of a inquiry upon a conditional offer of employment. And I'm happy to answer more detailed questions about that if people have them later, but that's a very lengthy discussion in and of itself. Sexual harassment, of course, is covered under the law as well. Reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities, all is covered under the area of employment. Public accommodations. Essentially, we're just looking at places that offer goods and services to the general public that are generally accessible. And that can include an institution that has relatively limited access, such as like a university with a closed campus. So essentially, if a person is denied entry, denied a service, made to feel unwelcome receiving a service, that would be considered discrimination under public accommodations. One example that I use is, for example, if young men of color are being followed around a store under suspicion of stealing, which is a common form of racial discrimination that occurs, that would be public accommodations discrimination. Housing discrimination as well. Looking for housing, being denied housing on a wrongful basis. One of the most common forms that I also like to mention as well is discrimination on the basis of lawful source of income. So by lawful source of income, referring to, Section 8 vouchers, city FEPs, SSI, any type of program or voucher assistance that a person might use to access housing. Being denied housing in a particular building or a particular neighborhood, being steered to a different neighborhood, being told that certain programs are accepted while others are not. This is illegal. So discrimination in the housing search process, unequal conditions in your housing. So for example, not having your lease renewed, not having repairs done, if that person is being targeted on the basis of a protected class, would also be covered under the law. Discriminatory harassment. Essentially what that looks like is, threats, violence, or the intimidation on the basis of a protected class as well. So, typically this may look like street harassment. This may look like a physical attack. Very unfortunately referring to the dramatic increase in anti-Asian bias and attacks that have occurred in the context of the coronavirus and related stigma and prejudice, that most of those types of incidents would be considered under discriminatory harassment. And then finally, moving on to bias-based profiling by law enforcement, that pretty much speaks for itself. So we're talking about discriminatory treatment by agents of law enforcement institutions. And these are specifically, we're talking about New York City institutions. So NYPD, corrections officers, other agencies that may have the ability to issue tickets and summonses and fines and this type of thing. If New York City entities are conducting these types of, if they're fulfilling their law enforcement duties, but in such a way that is including discriminatory targeting of certain citizens of New York City, then that would be covered under the law as well. And the reason I mentioned that's New York City specific is because, a federal institution such as ICE which is something we hear a lot of complaints about. They're not under our jurisdiction as a federal agency, although they may be operating within the boundaries of New York City. And that's just something I'll mention very quickly as well, which is that all discrimination that occurs within New York City is covered. Our statute of limitations is 1 year, with the exception of gender-based harassment, such as sexual harassment, which, because of the Stop Sexual Harassment Act, is actually up to a 3-year statute of limitations. All other discrimination has a 1-year statute of limitation. It does not matter whether the person lives in New York City. It does not matter whether a company is based in New York City or not. If an act of discrimination occurs within the 5 boroughs, it is covered under our law. I imagine I've been already talking for quite a while. I haven't really been, unfortunately, checking the time, my bad, but I'll just stop there and I'll open the floor for questions and discussion.
Thank you, Ryan, for such an informative presentation. I see that I have one hand up, Marissa Mack. She's the chair of our Economic Development and Culture Committee.
Hi, thank you so much for presenting this evening. I am one of those individuals you mentioned earlier who does not know much about your agency, so it was great to hear about what you guys are doing and how you are able to help specifically our neighborhood and other neighborhoods around the city that probably could really use these services and resources. So I guess just as a parameter, who is and who isn't eligible for the services that you have?
Okay, good question.
That's one question. I just have one more question, but that's
sure,
question.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, please. Yeah.
Oh, okay, got you. Yeah, so first of all, actually, before I answer your question, I also just want to note, with regard to our contact information, which I had not mentioned how people can actually access our services, I just put that up on here so that folks can have that for reference as well. This is our phone number, how to contact us, information for how to access our website as well, which has a lot of different resources. So who is covered under the law? So basically, as I mentioned, anyone that experiences discrimination within the boundaries of New York City, anyone, regardless of their documentation status, regardless of whether they live in New York City, if you physically exist within the political boundaries of the 5 boroughs and you experience any type of discrimination, you can file a complaint with us. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't think of a single instance. The only instance in which you would not be able to seek our resources is if the instance of discrimination that you experienced was not jurisdictional for us. You know, like, for example, if somebody gets denied a job because they have tattoos. Having tattoos is not a protected class, unfortunately. So there are, you know, incidents that occur which are biased and unfortunate, but it will have to be jurisdictional under our law. As long as you are physically present within the 5 boroughs and you experience discrimination, you can file a complaint. There's virtually no restrictions.
Okay.
Marissa, you had another question?
I appreciate. Yes, I'm sorry, just one other question. And so I appreciate you presenting here. And your organization actually touches, I think, each of our committees. So I don't want to necessarily say that you have to present at all of them, but I do feel like the information that you have would be really helpful for economic development, for our small businesses and people that are in the area, especially as it relates to employment services. And then also just generally supporting small businesses who are already struggling financially right now. And so obviously any free support they can get would be extremely helpful. So I would like to invite you to come to economic development during this year. And I'm sure you'll have some other requests. So, you know, happy to balance that out with your schedule. But I do really appreciate the information that you've provided. But again, you touched so many different of our committees here. So we will be in touch as to how you can further share out that information to our community.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll just mention really quickly in response to that. So yeah, I'm definitely completely willing to give presentations to any other committees that may be interested. I would also love I'm sure everyone, you know, on the committee has also contacts with community-based organizations in the area of the board as well. I mean, those are organizations that I would love to be in touch with as well. I'm also a Spanish speaker, so for organizations that primarily service monolingual Spanish-speaking individuals, I'm happy to give presentations there as well. And also a note on that as well is, with regard to who is eligible for receiving our services, I just want to note as well that we do have specific protections. There are protected classes for language, national origin, and documentation status. So, those individuals not only qualify, but there are specific protections particularly designated to protect, immigrant New Yorkers. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
Perfect. And I'm sorry, just as a workaround, maybe you don't come to Echo Dev, but maybe you present a full board where we have more of an audience and other people there as well. And that's a way that you can just kind of disseminate all of that at one time. But happy to discuss and connect you with others as well. Thank you for presenting.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and actually, one other thing I want to note as well with that is that we do also have presentations that are more specifically geared to particular topics. So if you wanted a presentation specifically on employment or specifically on housing, I'm also happy to do that.
Thank you, Ryan. We have a question from our Chair of Environment, Open Space and Parks, Jessica Elliott.
Thank you, Nelsa. And thank you, Ryan. I just have it's probably a weird question. I'm just curious how this branch works with other city agencies, if they do at all.
Yeah, we absolutely do. So that can look a lot of different ways. So my department, Community Relations Bureau, we do offer trainings to other agencies because we do know that unfortunately, sometimes there are community complaints about services from government agencies as well. So we do work with other city agencies, especially those that we feel may be most in need of our, trainings, to get an audience with them, to get in the room to speak with their, staff as well about the nature of our law and all the same topics that we're talking about. Now, that being said, other city agencies also are within the jurisdiction of our law. So we have the ability to, and we have also brought in lawsuits against other city agencies, which has had, instances of egregious violations of the anti-discrimination law as well. So we work with them, we collaborate with them, we offer these trainings and educational resources to them, and we also can sue them if need be.
Great. Yeah, I was just curious because when you mentioned housing, I was thinking a lot about NYCHA and if there's, any overview of services provided like NYCHA and in relation to discrimination. And then something we've been talking about in general, like on a larger scale, like a community or district scale, like we were talking about the budget across community boards 8 and 11, where sanitation services are cut in different ways. So just curious how that might apply, but thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah, so actually, if the question is in regard to NYCHA in particular, that's a much more complicated issue because of the kind of hybrid local federal nature of NYCHA. I think, part of the problem with the structure of NYCHA is that the federal government and local governments often pass the buck to each other to avoid accountability, and that can make it very hard to actually, have a legal process with a logical conclusion. With a concrete, tangible resolution. So NYCHA is a much more complicated entity to deal with. But yeah, I'm definitely happy to speak more about, the possibilities there.
Thank you, Ryan. We have a question from our Chair of our Housing Committee, Jeremiah Schlotman.
Hi, Ryan, how you doing? I just wanted to follow up. I don't know if how much you might know, if this is better for the law or the enforcement side of the agency, but I was wondering if you are familiar with the effectiveness of the investigations on these discrimination complaints, particularly when it comes, for example, for me, obviously I'm interested more in housing, but I know in dealing with landlords, the overwhelming majority are going to be savvy enough to know that they can't put forth any discriminatory means, right? So investigations have to be quite either sophisticated or folks have to have sort of like smoking gun evidence, which is fairly rare. So I was wondering if you are familiar at all with the numbers and effectiveness of those sorts of investigations, or are you really just focused on what is probably more low-hanging fruit? You know, those landlords who just don't care, they're just discriminatory, and it is what it is, and you can get them. And then a final interrelated question is, what do the financial penalties look like, and are there any provisions under the law where penalties would inure to the benefit of the discriminated against tenant versus like the city, right? Because like harassment fines, those are penalties to HPD, right? They don't go to into the tenant's pocket. So anyway, hope you can just clarify on those issues. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so that's definitely kind of a multi-layered question. So I'm going to do my best to take it step by step. So we do address both of those types of landlords. We do address, actually the landlords who are very explicit in their discrimination actually are quite a lot more than you might think. There's a lot of smoking gun evidence about landlord discrimination. They actually quite often put into writing that they're denying someone housing for a particular reason, and that reason is their protected class. Whether they're aware that they're violating the law or not is another story, but it does happen quite frequently. I mean, I actually have spoken with a lot of tenants that have connected with our legal resources where they have a text or an email that's saying the landlord offered me an apartment, and so they knew that I was a veteran paying for my rent with a veteran associated source of income, and then they withdrew the offer, so like this type of thing actually does happen quite a bit. Now that being said, yes, that is the easier type of case to prosecute. And we do have a more sophisticated investigative process, to investigate the things that are not so obvious, more subtle and more nuanced forms of discrimination. So one of the ways that we do that is we have testers, which, for folks who may not be aware of the term, is basically just like undercover agents, essentially. So if we have, especially if we have multiple complainants, who are complaining about a particular landlord, we can send people out as if they're looking for housing and see how they're treated. So we send people out of different demographics, maybe different language abilities, or, whatever the case may be. And we see how those individuals are treated. So if somebody gets told that no housing is available, and then another tester calls, that 5 minutes later and suddenly there's housing available, then that's its own form of a smoking gun. So we have that. Of course, we have the ability to subpoena landlords and any other entity to uncover, internal documents that we can review and things like that, tax records, in the instance that money may be involved. So we do have a substantial, investigatory system through which we can prosecute. With regard to what penalties look like, so we can issue up to $250,000 fines in the case of the most extreme, egregious forms of discrimination. That's pretty rare that it would get to that level, and that's a fine to the city. There's no cap on settlements to the victim of the discrimination. So that can look a lot different. Like I said, in the instance of employment, if somebody is fired, how much are they owed in back pay, in addition to emotional damages, in addition to whatever other, finances may be involved. In the case of a tenant, have within any instance of how they might have lost income with regard to their housing situation, or how, being homeless may have impacted them if they were denied housing, that type of thing. We're all definitely going to take that into consideration, again, as well as emotional stress and damages with regard to thinking about what that settlement looks like, as well as practically solving the problem, or in other words, making sure they get housing, or that housing is restored to, safe and livable conditions. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
You're muted, Nelson.
Oh, thank you. Are there any questions for Ryan on his presentation?
I would just add, as you talked about special presentations, what presentations do you have for youth or issues around youth? Thank you.
Yeah, so we have quite a few. We have what we call the peer mediation program. And so that's something that operates typically in high schools and sometimes in middle schools, essentially looking at, well, exactly what it's called, peer mediation programs. But we do so with a particular lens of, looking at, socioeconomic issues and issues of discrimination and prejudice and that type of thing. So we take that lens and we apply it to like mediation and conflict resolution amongst youth. We also have an Empowering Young Women program targeted specifically to, again, typically high schoolers, sometimes middle school, young girls. We have programs for supporting LGBTQ plus youth as well. So we have quite a wide range of youth-oriented programs.
Are there any other questions? I see no more hands, so I want to thank you, Ryan, for that informative presentation. We have a copy of this presentation, right?
So unfortunately, we're actually not permitted to share the
Okay.
presentations themselves, but what I can
Okay.
do is, so first of all, all of the information that's in the presentation is pretty much also available on a website. So I would definitely
Okay.
direct folks to the website. We have like an annual report there where you can review, the summary of our annual activities. You can review, legal cases, summaries of legal cases that have settlements, and a lot of other important information. So that's all there. But of course, if there's any particular information that you're interested in, I can also make sure that that gets to you.
Okay, I just wanted, I don't, I'm not sure if I wrote the correct amount. You said fine to the city maximum, did you say $225,000?
$250,000.
$250,000. Okay. Thank you so much, Ryan, for
My
being so
pleasure.
thorough. Okay.
My pleasure.
Okay. With that, we're going to move, since we have no more presentation, we are going to move on to new business. Is there any new business? Okay. All right. Okay, so in terms of new business, the only thing I'm going to ask is that because Marissa's Economic Development Committee met after the full board, if she would take a few minutes and just give us a brief update on the committee meeting yesterday.
So sure. So we met yesterday. We had a healthy meeting. Our presenters were the Africa Center, who took the time to speak about what they are working on currently as it relates to the center and also their development. So not sure if people are aware, but they do have a second and third floor that they are building out, and also an additional space. So they presented on that work, and actually, David, your name came up because they are looking to partner with more youth-related organizations and youth in general. So I will be in contact with you with their information so they can have more dialogue with you in that area. They are not necessarily looking for anything from us at this time. The new space, I think, is set to open in 2020. Will be finished possibly towards the end of 2022 and then open in 23. But they are still having events, and again, looking to partner with other youth organizations in the community. We also had a presentation from a small business. Okay, the exact name is Angel, if you're on and you know, please inform me.
You're on your own, lady.
Okay, thank you.
I'm kidding. I'm looking it up for you now.
as-
Hold on. So I'm looking for
As
it.
always, yeah. The small business network, which is a part of the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, and they have a number of programs that are available for small businesses that are free of charge. Their services are paid for through a partnership grant that they received. And so they have been in contact with Union Settlement and Uptown Grand Central in regards to the services that they offer, but we will stay in contact with them to have further discussions on how they can engage specifically East Harlem. And then hopefully see if there are ways where we can provide some benefits for jobs and additional resources to connect them with in order to help small businesses.
So Marissa, I found the name for you. It's the the New York City Small Business Resource Network. They shared a copy of the presentation that they gave to you guys yesterday, the PowerPoint. So I'm going to put it up with the agenda from last night's meeting. Folks can find it there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No problem.
And then additionally, we did have a conversation with Union Settlement. Pablo Guzman, who comes to our meetings every single month, discussed that the East Harlem grant funding ended on the 16th. And so they are requesting that the remaining funds be disseminated back into the community for mainly restaurants to continue that support. And so we issued a letter of request to have those funds released and to be used again within the community, the remaining funds, since the program has closed. So those were the main items from our meeting yesterday. We also had a discussion about a project. One of our goals that we are working on is to have a report by the end of this year to give to our developers so that they're guided and they can see what are the ways that they can engage with our community. So Jenny Tromsky, Dawn Sanders, and Vinny are working on this document, but we are all going to contribute towards it. And so basically what it's going to do is when developers come in, we are also obviously working with Land Use Committee on this as well, but when developers come in, we will have a guide to give them as to what are the different ways that they can work within our community, not only through jobs, but partnerships with schools, with sports teams, with art organizations, and give them some guidance as to how they can engage our neighborhood. And that was our meeting yesterday.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Marissa. Are there any questions on anything Marissa reported on? If so, raise your hand. Marissa, you lucked out. I see no hands. So with that, hello, Jose. Okay, with that, we're going to continue moving
Actually, I
on.
had a question.
You did? Okay, because I didn't see a
Yes,
hand raised, so I will recognize you. Go ahead,
Thank
Jose.
you. In regard to the loan, do we know, did they actually report how many businesses in East Harlem received the loans successfully?
They did report that information. It should be in the minutes that we have. I don't have it off the top of my head right now, but
Okay,
they did
no,
report
I'll
that
look it up later.
information. And they also did report the dollar amount too. So
Nice.
that will be provided.
I have the dollar amount if you want me to share it, Marissa.
Perfect. Thank you, Angel, for your help.
Yeah, no problem. So there were $4 million that were targeted for the grants, of which to date they've dispersed approximately $3.4 million, and they have just over 600,000 left over. That's what the committee was targeting. And then there's also other funds that were originally identified for a loan program. And what was raised last night by Pablo from Union was that from their observation that furthering the grant program or doing a second phase of the grant program may be more immediately beneficial to businesses in the community versus distributing those funds via the loan program. But that was a suggestion, that recommendation, and I followed up with Marissa and the team, the Echo Dev team this afternoon. That recommendation would have to be authorized by the Economic Development Corporation, who are managing those funds. But I told Marissa I agree with the idea. I think it's a sound idea. Just kind of gotta hope that EDC signs off.
So our letter would be to encourage them to do that. So,
Right.
Thank you, Angel.
Yep. Yeah, of course.
Are there any other questions for Marissa? I see no hands. So with that,
I'm sorry, Nelson.
Angel, go ahead.
Just one more thing from Echo, because I listened to the recording. I wasn't able to attend last night, so Marlene filled in, so I listened to the recording. Marissa, would you want to speak to Giselle's idea for the food relief proposal and the food drive thing?
Well, I figured I would talk because we're gonna have a meeting on Friday about that. And because it's in conjunction with Robert's plan, and we're meeting about that on Friday. So I just wanted to get more information about that before, I guess, sharing it out. But if you would like to, that's fine.
I was trying to give you a softball, and if you didn't want to swing at it, that's on you. That was an easy one. That's called an assist.
Thank you, Angel. So there, Robert spoke about a program during our full board meeting. There's going to be a follow-up call, but there's no additional information yet. So confirmed yet, unless you would like to speak more about it.
Sure. So the idea is to identify funds or establish a program to benefit struggling local like food businesses, while at the same time addressing the growing food insecurity issues that our residents are facing. That was the gist, right, Marissa? Yes, Angel, it was. That's correct, Angel. You said the right thing, Angel. Oh, you're welcome, Marissa. Anytime. I'm here for you.
It's amazing how Marissa's voice changed towards the end, but
she has a cold.
I thought I was.
No, we have
only
Ryan
one.
on the phone, so that's why it changed.
Ryan and me are cool, so you go ahead.
That's why you're all on your best behavior. Okay, thank you so much, Marissa. With that, if there is no more new business, does anybody want to explore any old business?
I was gonna say, I love to explore.
Okay. Jason, what would you like to explore?
I'm just thinking about the great work we did with the statement, with our response to letters to comment for our draft. Ryan, thank you for still staying on. I'm so used to presenting and then skating. So, Jessica already explored the concept of the budget, but, I'm just thinking out loud, and I wanted to think of ways that we could continue to better advocate for our communities and more importantly for your committees. And one of the concepts that we've been talking about, right, is engagement. We've been having that discussion a lot in the last 4 months, and engaging with our CBOs. Angel, also thank you for getting the Human Rights Commission out here. I've definitely used a lot of your reports, Ryan, in the past for fighting for minority rights and job development. So that organization is legit. I'm just basically trying to figure out how can we further engage with our constituents to better advocate for them. And one thing in particular, we have the budget hearings coming up. You've heard some of your members in your committees. I respect, all your positions and involvement. And I would like for us to think for the next month of how we could get certain people to get involved, to go to these budget hearings, and to just figure out more ways to properly advocate for our district and what's evident as the inequitable share that's being contributed to us. Like what was brought up by Jessica about CB8 and 11, it's real, it's shown in the capital side of the budget, but what I tend to find more challenging is all the agencies that don't designate our district specifically, right? When I think of the Economic Development Corporation and Union Settlement, sounds like great work. Why I can't see that money in the budget to show a surplus or some type of economic growth for our district, as opposed to all the losses that I'm seeing for the entire agency. And, I'm using that because that was brought up today, and I could do that with each and every one of our committees. And I want to figure out more ways to channel support in our advocacy efforts, and more importantly, how to collaborate with each other through our tracking mechanisms. So that's me taking a shot. As
Thank you,
Marissa
Jason.
says, you miss the shots you don't take.
That is true. Thank you, Jason. Xavier, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Nelson, everyone. Real quick, I had a couple work deadlines, so I'm still drafting out the pathway positions and the distilled version of our parliamentary procedure. When I have it ready prior to next executive, I'm going to drop it into our little sandbox folder, and you guys can take a look at it in advance. And if you have any questions, Angel shared that the packet, I think it's like 32 pages, is pretty light reading. So if you have any thoughts or questions, please circle back to let me know. And that's it under old business. Thanks.
Thank you, Xavier. Jessica, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Nelsa. I have a couple questions, I guess, for old business. One of them is we discussed at the Environment, Open Space and Parks meeting that I guess they don't have a clear answer for us about the Richard Toussaint Park and pathway naming. And we heard that the commissioner is going to be making an announcement in June. I'm planning on attending an event coming up about the naming and everything, not this specific naming, but in general for Black History Month. But I'm just curious, and for our purposes, we talked about resubmitting our previous resolution, maybe with some edits. Wondering what your perspective is on that. And then I have two other really quick questions.
You're asking me my perspective.
Yes, and Angel
Or
and
just Angel.
Xavier, whoever.
So I don't have, if we have an original resolution on file and we want to revisit that resolution for discussion and updating, I don't think that is an issue at all. You know, especially if you're adding more detail and maybe something that was missed in the original resolution. And it's along the lines of the original resolution, and it's not counter to what the original position was, because that doesn't sound like that's what it would be, because the original resolution was the position. So anything that you flesh out, I think would be helpful. Angel, would you like to throw in your perspective, and then Xavier?
Sure. I'm sorry, Jess. Are you referring to the Toussaint renaming?
Yeah, I just want to eliminate any possibility that we get to June and they say, oh, since you submitted that 2 years ago or whatever.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. Like reaffirming that position or
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay.
Mhm.
So
We
cross-
did that.
Toussaint was awesome.
Xavier?
Yeah, so Angel and I are gonna totally agree with this. It's what it does is it reinforces, and it's showing that we're maintaining this position rather than pivoting in one direction or another. So, and if there's additional information that can be added to supplement and strengthen it, that's beneficial. So, yeah.
Thank you all. And then just
David?
Jessica, we
wait,
actually
David?
did
oh,
that.
sorry, go ahead.
We did that with youth and education around the fast student funding, where the original resolution was 2 years ago. And we rewrote a letter restating, you know, where is this? And then that was one of the questions I asked Chuck Schumer the other night when he was on with us, is where's the money and what are you going to do to advocate for it, right? So I think it's good to bring it up, and that's what we kind of talked about in the budget needs, is how we revisit things, because they often don't get followed up on or addressed. So just on the sanitation, do you know CD8s, they pass me every morning and coming from the Bronx. So they're not even in Manhattan. Those trucks are up in the Bronx somewhere, parked up in the Bronx. So they get more money and they don't even house their own garbage and sanitation.
Right.
That's tricky.
Yeah, we're Carly and I had a meeting today, and we're going to be contacting Kalis's office to get information from them to support a resolution on that issue. I had another question regarding we're thinking about doing potentially like tabling or something for the Earth Day events that some of the park groups are doing. I'm just wondering what the process is for that.
Jessica, can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Like for
I
example,
have an ear infection.
Oh,
Not
it's
that
okay.
everybody needs to know, so it takes me a while to process.
yeah, for example, Harlem Art Park that Debbie Quinones is on the board of, they're doing an Earth Day event, and in obviously we want to participate, but I think, you know, we want to do some sort of community board table or some community engagement effort while we're there. So just curious what the process is on that.
Well, the process to me, unless Angel wants to, and Xavier wants to chime in. First of all, to me, there's an indication that the committee wants to table, or the community board, there's a request for us to table. Let's say if Environment, Open Space and Parks wants to take the lead in doing the tabling, then we will ensure that that we have enough volunteers to man the table. If it's an all-day event, right, we need to make sure we have enough coverage, that we have enough information and literature and whatever else is needed for that event at that time. I don't think, I think that putting it in an email is sufficient, but I will ask Angel, is there a special form or anything that we have that when we want to table at events that we fill out?
Like to like just go table to an event? Not at all. Like if we were expending funds or something, then there's a form for that, but unless that's in the proposal for this thing, then no. If you need a table, like a physical table, we have a table in the office. If you want to use what is it called?
The banner.
The banner, we can make that available. We just have to coordinate, because I'm the only one with the key, or Nelsa, just someone that can let y'all in to get the table and the banner, the tablecloth, the table banner. That's what it was. In terms of materials, like we can talk offline, and you can let me know like what materials you would need, and see what we can provide. We haven't been there in a while, but we can figure it out. But in terms of just doing it, no, go ahead, go for it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, and I'll definitely email about it. And I just had one last question about the CB8, CB11 joint parks meeting. I know I'd reached out to multiple people and nobody responded. So I was just curious if you'd seen any movement on your end, and if we could keep aiming for April.
So definitely what we can do is we can send an email to the chair of the committee and CC the new chair of CB8, which we met at the press conference for the Esplanade. Just requesting that, we would like to have a joint meeting, or if for whatever reason they are not open to a joint meeting, still CB11 members can register and attend their meetings as well, and can opine that way. But I have no doubts that they would welcome joint collaborations. As you see, over the past few years, we seem to collaborate more and more with our sister boards. So we can definitely put in another request. It's just possible that it's just been like lost in the shuffle somewhere.
Great. Yeah, any assistance on that would be great, because I contacted the district manager and the co-chair of parks and haven't heard anything. So that would be great. Thank you so much.
All right. So we'll
Just
follow up on that.
Send me a note tomorrow, and I'll bug Will to get your response.
Will Bright Bill. Okay. Nye has her hand up.
Yeah, just to let everyone know, I have a key too, in case to kind of assist in any way, Angel and Nilsa. So if you don't want.
Thank you, Xavier. Nye, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is ridiculously bad today. I just had a quick question, and this may have been covered because my sound went out for a little bit. Regarding the discretionary applications for discretionary funding from City Council, are we submitting anything for any special projects related to CB11? And again, if this was covered, please forgive me.
No. Angel?
For any special projects, no. I was just going to resubmit the same request we made last year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. If you had any ideas, now's the time, because I got to send an email out because we passed the deadline. I didn't even notice. But the council members will entertain late requests from community boards.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any more questions? No? Okay, so with that, I will close with old business. I will like to make an announcement. It hasn't been disseminated to the full board yet, but it will. And so I would like to give Jeremiah Schlotman an opportunity to speak to his fellow chairs and to explain why I just called on him.
That sounds so ominous.
No, it's not ominous. It's just I'm slow. I'm on medication.
That sounds super
Jeremiah,
scary.
Jeremiah, you still on? Jeremiah, you on? You're muted.
Yes, I am
Unmute
here.
yourself, my dear.
I am
Okay.
here.
So Jeremiah, would you like to share with your fellow chairs an email you sent me? I could have done it next month, but I just want to actually just share, or would you like to share?
No, it's no problem. I'm happy to share.
Okay.
Yeah. So I sent Nilsa, Xavier, Angel, Marlene an email, just letting them know that, I tried for a long time to make it work, but over time I had to come to the realization that I unfortunately cannot have the level of commitment that I need to have, that East Harlem deserves as the chair of Housing Committee, and also balance all of the increase in work responsibilities and other personal things that have come up lately. So, it was a really tough thing to realize, and I really enjoy the work. I think there's, some really great things we've done. I've met amazing people. A lot of you know who you are. I try to vocalize it whenever possible. And I feel really great about the direction that we've been heading lately under Nilsa's leadership, and where we've gone these last few years, and the new blood that we've had on the board, and how it's combined with a lot of the older, people who give us a lot of institutional knowledge. And it's been really great, and I've been really encouraged. So I know I'll really miss the work, because it's sort of, it links the sort of, the day-to-day work I do, direct legal services with tenants, and then to be able to connect it with the policy work that we do here, while also still providing other direct constituent services in other ways outside of the legal arena. It's just been really rewarding and fulfilling, in sort of a more complete way of addressing housing issues, which everyone knows is top priority for our community, and for many communities, particularly working class, low income, and communities of color. So, I really enjoyed this, and I will miss you all very much. I'll miss this work. But, as I think it was Xavier said in his reply to my email, that, I don't plan on being a stranger. I really do hope to still be involved and, come to meetings whenever possible, and advocate and push you all whenever I have an opinion that I want you all to hear, and to try to persuade you over to. So, thank everyone for everything, for all the contributions you've also brought in my life. So this has been a great experience.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I speak for myself, and I think I tried to make it clear how much you've meant to the board and me personally. I consider you a friend. I remember when you first got on the board, and it's wonderful to see the leadership ascension that has occurred. I quite understand about the responsibilities and trying to keep up, and it becomes a struggle. I actually decided to announce it in this forum because I figured that other chairs will put pressure on you to stay. No, I'm only joking. But I just wanted them to have the opportunity, as leadership of the board, to be able to let you know, even if it's through chat, how much they think of your leadership. We will miss you. You can always come on as a public member if you find that your schedule allows. I should have asked you, did you make an announcement to your committee? Because if not, I have to even let your committee know before everyone else does.
Right, yes, we still have to let the committee know, so.
Okay, so let me suggest that you do this. because I think that they would rather hear it from you before hearing it from me. If you can, I would suggest, and I will send it to the board at large, but I would suggest that you send to your committee members, and you could CC me, Angel, obviously, and Xavier, that as requested by the chair, you know, that you would let us know, and that you are letting them know that leadership, you know, basically what you told us, because I think it would be better hearing it from you.
Right.
Because you have been such, you know, such an important part of that committee, so that it just doesn't seem like a shock. So if you can send them all an email, you know, just let them know that it was at my direction, then I will follow up the email with the rest of the full board. You know, as you know, new members are coming on, but that doesn't mitigate your absence. And so, you know, I will tell you that you always brought resources to the meetings, and you've always been just, you know, I can't tell you how much people have told me in the community how much the information they get from the housing committee, and how it became more robust the past few years. And I can only attribute that to the work that the community board staff has been doing in supporting the committees, as well as your leadership, and now John Green, who's the vice chair. And so I want to just take a moment and thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you a lot.
Okay.
I'll send that email out.
All right. Well, with that, okay. With that said, unless there's anything anyone wants to add on that note, I will entertain a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
wait.
Oh,
Bye,
sorry.
Jeremiah.
I will
Good
not.
luck.
I will not entertain a motion to adjourn. I take it back.
Yeah, sorry. So related to what Jeremiah said, I already wrote to Jeremiah separately. But to like the news about Jeremiah, just two quick things since we're speaking with leadership here. One, provided a report to the secretary and the board chair and vice chair in regards to attendance for 2020. We again had a lot of members that, you know, meet the criteria for removal. That continues to be a problem. And then also, without belaboring that point, we are looking at having significant turnover for the third year in a row. We've received other notifications of members that are not intending to reapply. They haven't made that public, so I will not share that. But between, you know, that information plus people that have already resigned, we also had, you know, a longtime member pass away tragically. We're looking at upwards of 13 new members again, and we had 13 new members last cycle. That's a lot of turnover. That's a lot of onboarding. That's a lot of, you know, starting from scratch. It's a lot of impact on board committees and their work. You know, Jeremiah was part of a pretty large class when he came on, and we were like very fortunate to bring him on, and a number of people that came on in his class or have also been like greatly beneficial to the board. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, we eventually lose these kinds of members, right? It says, you know, like you have to enjoy them while you, and get the best out of them while you have them, but like it's just like kind of a process of community board life that you lose them. It's a challenge. It presents challenges. So just wanted to share that just so you all are aware that, you know, there's going to be, you know, several changes. Like the most recent resignation that I can share is Jazzy Lidriano resigned earlier this week. Similar situation, joined the community board, but just busy schedule on her, you know, her own life, and just was not able to like jump in. So like, I don't even know if you guys ever even met her, which is, you know, it happens. But anyway, just wanted to share those two bits of information.
And so, you know, one of the
Yes,
things that we,
Sorry,
one
I
of
just
the
want to add
things,
to Angel.
wait,
you
David,
know-
let me just, wait,
Sure.
David, let me just
Sure.
finish a minute.
There you go.
So one of the things that we're going to be doing is looking at attendance And we really have to also, as chairs, right, have those conversations. So while removal comes at the uppermost level, it's important that that on the committee level, right, because it affects quorum. We see that someone is not coming in a lot or has been absent, then at least as the chair just started that conversation. I think oftentimes we forget that that the board has a chair, but that as the committee chairs, it would be better to work in a workplace setting to actually get to know your members. And I don't mean socially by going out, but I mean just in terms of their work, their interests, and just finding out what might be keeping them from coming to the committee, because some members may not be able to make certain committees they originally signed up for, but might be able to come to others, and they may not be aware that we can switch. So I just wanted to bring that, in order to mitigate the damage before we start with the new class, right? Just voting people off if we don't need to. We're going to need to figure out interim steps to put in. That's just basic steps to see how we can assess how our membership is doing in our committees. David?
So two things, just following you, the challenge is that we really hardly ever vote people off, and that when it really comes to it, but at this point, with being short and people not showing up and not voting off, which we've always had a hard time doing, affects again the committees. But I'll say this also, Gail's office reached out to Yolanda McBride from Children's Aid today, and asking that there's such a low turnout for East Harlem and applying for the community board, and encouraging if there were other people we knew. And then right before this meeting, I got a call from Gail's office as well, if I was going to reapply. And I did mention that I would, I'm a procrastinator to the last, but I've been working with my youth, and I met with her today about her application. So Natasha Rodriguez, that's been at some of our meetings this year, is going to apply as well.
Thank you, David. Jose Altamirano?
Are we gonna get into the details of who's been absent, or?
Well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that tonight. I'm going to look at the attendance. Every chair should have an idea of who's been absent on their committees, because attendance is taken at the committee level, which is then given to us in the office. But we will definitely disseminate that information in terms of committees, so that you get a sense of who has been at your committees and who hasn't been, right? The other factors that come in play is whether people have a 1-year term or a 2-year term. If someone has a 1-year term and they haven't been coming, then as the Manhattan, if they reapply as the Manhattan Borough President reviews attendance, then the conversation has to be, if you really haven't been here, why would you reapply? And for people that have another year, then that's where it really comes into play, because people that have more than 1 year and are going into their second year, if they don't make a change, then they will continue to affect quorum. And that's where we have to, it's always hard to vote people off. But the fact of the matter is that the Manhattan Borough President appoints, but it's up to us to review the process and try to find out if people just need a change in schedule, or if they just have a new hardship that might resolve itself, that we can potentially work with if it's of a short duration. But this board typically does not like to vote people off, because they become very friendly with others. But realize that it affects committee work, it affects quorum. And the executive committee was a place to brainstorm and work strategic planning and things like that. But when committees don't meet quorum, then what the executive committees become is just a place to make sure that the work continues and do the motions and stuff for things that could not pass on the committee level. And so my concern is always, if the executive committee should change formats where it doesn't need to meet every month and wants to meet every 2 months, if our committees are not meeting quorum, then how does the work get done? You will always have to call a special meeting. So attendance is really important. That's something that we're all going to delve into for the next meeting,
Madam Chair, I just
and
wanted
maybe
to point
prior
out
before that. Mhm.
that due to the fact that we've been meeting through Zoom, I mean, honestly, it's made it easier than ever. And I really
Right.
think we should really judge harshly anyone that's been significantly absent in the last year, because obviously before there was a little bit of a hardship going to a meeting, staying in a meeting, then after going home and all these other things, and everyone's busy. But, you know, since COVID hit, we've been having virtual meetings, and honestly, like if there's someone that has significant absences, I mean, if we're having an issue with filling seats, and we should actually then let the whole community board know, because we may have to push people in our community to apply. But that there should be a reasonable excuse, like since COVID, since we're meeting virtually.
Right. I will tell you that I always push for people to apply for Community Board 11, because what ends up happening is sometimes you have like the exact amount of people applying, or you have enough applications, but they may not fit the criteria, or they may have conflicts. So we should always look to market the community board, because even if it's not the time to apply as a full board member, people can always apply as a public member, which will be one committee, and get the idea of how the community board works, so that this way they have something to talk about in their application. So I do agree with you that I think that the Manhattan Borough President has been concerned and has made it clear that there's been, not only in Community Board 11, but across the community boards themselves, their application process has been less and slower. And so that is something we need to look at. But if we have people that aren't coming, and I agree with you, Jose, that digitally there should really be no reason you can't join, because you could even call into meetings, even if you don't get on Zoom. If people can't make those meetings and they weren't making, you look at the prior history and they weren't, then that's a significant issue. And so if they only have, if their membership is up, these people should not consider reapplying, because they are not here to do the work. And for those, like I said, who are, then the executive committee needs to move forward into discussing this and putting some action behind the words, and notifying these board members that we're looking at attendance. They've been out this amount of time, and they can talk to us. We can set up a meeting virtually as to what's keeping them from, and from coming to the meetings virtually, and then make our decisions from there. But I think the board has to start thinking that it's a government body, that it is here to protect the interests of the community. And while I dearly understand when we make friendships, that sometimes as leaders, we have to make a hard decision. And that may be voting someone off, because we understand that maybe this is not the right time for them to be a board member. They can always reapply when their schedule permits. So I agree. Marissa, you have a question?
So in the case of when we do know that there is a committee member that is not even responding, which has not only happened this year, but it has happened in previous years with other committee chairs, knowing that certain people are not coming, they're not responding, that I don't feel like there needs to be a whole process for that. And I mean, that's pretty immediate. But please tell me like what that process.
Well, we have a due process where if someone has been absent, we notify them. Obviously, they know they've been absent, right? But this is a protection. This is a process that we put in to protect the board, right? Everyone has to have a due process. And so we allow them, we notify them that they've been absent. We notify them that they're to come in and speak with us to address that they are in danger of being removed from the board. And then based on what we find out, their how they respond, whether they come in, a conversation may be had, like, from me, let's say, this has come up, this is where you are. We understand that your schedule may not work, but the absence is alone. And usually you can potentially get people to resign on their own because they don't want to be brought up on a vote. But in that case, for those who are notified, have a substantial absences, have not been responsive, right? And we document this, then the board needs to vote them out, right? And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago,
So
we
are the
had
committee-
someone, we had
Are the-
someone,
I'm so,
let me just explain one thing. So we had someone who had been appointed to this board. And we had actually two people who have been appointed to this board. One person did not want to attend our meetings, even though they were a community member, because they had other dealings somewhere else. And so it was very difficult to settle down into a community board 11 kind of routine and meetings. And so this person never came to the meetings. After waiting for a while for this person to attend meetings and didn't, I approached the person and I said to that person that we were going to vote him off. So he had a choice because of his attendance, how to handle it, right? So the point is, one, you either make a decision to come, two, you resign, or three, we vote you off. That person chose to resign as opposed to being voted off. They were real clear that they will have no problem working with Community Board 11, but that they could not commit to the service. We had someone else who was appointed and was absent for a long period of time, stated he wanted to come, but had a work schedule conflict. Rather than we notified him he was going to be voted off, he chose to resign. So
I think those are great examples when you have the communication with someone. There were two people, actually one person I had a conversation with from my committee who I am friendly with, who I checked in on, and I think they will be resigning. Of course, for confidentiality, will not be releasing their name. But then there's someone else who has not attended a meeting nor has responded since, I believe, November on my committee. And so I'm just, and these aren't hypothetical, these are factual.
So what we're gonna do, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at attendance. We're gonna now look at your attendance in particular, because it's very easy to see who hasn't attended, right? Because we have video recordings in addition, right? We have actual factual recordings. If that person is a 2-year person, then we will need to move forward, right? After review of the attendance and review of the executive committee, and we put together an attendance committee like we have had in the past, and then we will move forward. We will also contact that person to let them know that they're under a review process. If that person chooses to resign, so not to go through that process, then that will resolve that issue, especially in light that they've been uncommunicative. What I would like to suggest to all the chairs, and this was something that I had mentioned a long time ago, that just to keep not only in touch with your committee members, but make notations, right? Like if you see that committee members are not coming, and you see other things, then document it to me and to Angel. And you can CC the vice chair in an email, right? That, that you're reviewing your attendance, your committee membership, and that you find that one committee member is absent a lot and that you've tried to reach out and they have been uncommunicative, and you just want to flag that for us, because then this way we can, instead of waiting for a certain period of time where we review attendance, we can start reviewing it then. And so that also makes the committee leadership more assertive in terms of keeping track, because the committee can't just be people that show up and if you have quorum, you have quorum, but you may have people that are absent 3 and 4 meetings. And then, you know, like we won't really know until we flag the attendance. So I would appreciate if you are having those kind of issues with your committees now that new membership is coming on board, plus old membership may be term limited, or they may be just a 1 year as opposed to 2 years. So this way we have more of an idea of moving forward sooner rather than later. Because with new members, new committee assignments come up, and you want to make sure that you have a working committee and not a committee that has issues with attendance. I mean, we will always have people that will be absent, but I think we need to be clear the amount of absences that the board can sustain and still be effective. Marissa, does that make sense?
Thank you. I will forward all emails. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or in regards to attendance that Angel brought up? Xavier?
Just real quick, page 5 of our bylaws lines up the whole process of removal and how that takes place. So it's on our website under the bylaws with the tab. It'll help to refresh our memory on it. So that was all I was going to share. So thank you.
Right,
Thank
but
you,
it is a
Xavier.
process. It is,
There is a process.
it's an intense and long process and takes a couple months.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to happen if we like look at attendance, right? Like we said, we're going to do the executive committee, but that doesn't mean that we can't review, right? Like Angel, myself, Xavier, right? Carly and Marlene, get a sense of the attendance at the committee levels. We can reach out to the chairs to get a sense of how this person has been working or not working. Then we will reach out to this member and let them know that because of attendance, they've met the threshold for potential removal from the board. And we provide them something in writing based on page 5 of our bylaws. And we allow them to explain. But it could be an aberration that they're having a really bad several months, or it could be something that they just have bitten off more than they can chew and don't know quite what to do and don't realize that this is a quasi-governmental agency. And so there's, guidelines that we have to follow, and that there's certain things that we need from each member. And it may just be that explaining that they may realize that they don't fit the criteria that they thought was the criteria, and they just may resign. So I will definitely start looking at that. And I will look at people who have a certain amount of attendance from a certain point in time. Those that are going to be term limited, I'm going to make a notation of that for ourselves so that then we can have a further discussion. Are there any questions on anything that has been said so far? Wow, I don't see any questions. So hearing no questions, and unless there is one last thing that someone wants to say, I am calling to adjourn the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion, Nye Whitaker.
Motion by Nye Whitaker, second by
Marissa Mack.
Marissa Mack. Okay, I'm gonna vote by acclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. there's no no's, there's no nothing like that. So I want to thank you all. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit under the weather, but I want to thank you all for a great meeting. Put your pressure on Jeremiah. No, I'm only joking. And so I want to thank everyone, and we will be in touch regarding the attendance and anything else that you need. Just send me an email and CC Angel, and this way we'll make sure that we address everything that we talked about today. With that said, good night.
All right.
Everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.